2024 meeting of the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners. If you will stand with us, please. Our Commission Chaplain, Commissioner Romel McMurry, will lead us in our prayer and our pledge. Looks like we've got a guest.
Good evening, everyone. You can stand up here. I have a special guest with me tonight, but first I want to give a shout out to all of our commissioners who are wearing red ties tonight, so you all look really good, so I just want to say that. I have a special guest with me. As I stated last year, I have a pen pal. This is Miss Madison Wainwright. She is a 5th grader at Salem Elementary and serves as the secretary for student government. So if you could, let's give her a hand claps for being here. So each month we correspond. She'll write me a letter with the questions, and then I'll respond back. So it's been a joy to do that, going on the 2nd year in a row. So thank you, Madison, for being here. So if you would, please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we stand before you right now to say thank you. We know that we can never say it enough because of your daily reminders of who you are. As we approach this Easter Resurrection Month and Sunday that's later, let us be reminded of the one who died on the cross to save us all from our many sins. For we know that it is you that got up with all power in your hands. So that gives me hope every day that we can do all things through Christ that gives us strength. God, I ask you to help us to make peace whenever we can. When we're not sure about what to do, show us what we should do, and help us to have the courage to do it. I pray over every elected official that's in this room tonight and across our county, our state, and our country. Let us remember that leadership is not about being in charge, but it's about taking care of those that's in our charge. As I close this prayer, I ask that you be with us in this meeting tonight. I also ask that you continue to heal our land and protect those that protect us. We thank you for our public safety officials, along with our educators and so many others. I ask that you provide peace and unity amongst our children, our teachers, and our staff within our schools. For we know that you are not the author of confusion, but of peace. It's in your name that we pray. Amen. So we'll turn this way. Go ahead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Three white stars filled with blue. God keep them strong and ever true. Peace and pride and love as we salute the flag of Tennessee. Thank you. Thank you. You may be seated. This time we'll call on our Rutherford County Clerk, Lisa Crowell, to call the roll. Lisa.
Commissioner Oliver.
Present.
Commissioner Pearcy.
Here.
Commissioner Rather.
Here.
Commissioner Peay.
Here.
Commissioner Davison.
Here.
Commissioner Beverly.
Here.
Commissioner Cush. Commissioner Reed.
Here.
Commissioner James.
Here.
Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Anthony Johnson.
Present.
Commissioner Boyd.
Here.
Commissioner Paul Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Irvin.
Here.
Commissioner Harris. Here. Commissioner Dodd.
Here.
Chairman Phillips.
Present.
Commissioner McAdoo. Here. Commissioner McMurry.
Here.
Commissioner Gooch.
Here.
Commissioner Sereno.
Yeah.
We have a quorum, 20 present.
Thank you, Lisa. Commissioner Cush called me a little earlier this week. He's been called out of town on business, or scheduled out of town on business, and sends his regrets. We wish him safe travels. Item D, reading and approval of our minutes from last month. I'll call on our Chairman Pro-Tem, Trey Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have read the minutes and find them to be in order. I move that we dispense with reading and approve them as presented.
We have a motion.
Second.
Second, to approve last month's meeting minutes. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. We have no one sign up for public comments tonight. We'll get right into elections and confirmations. Call on our steering vice chair, Pettus Reed.
I think you may have missed the title.
Probably so.
Number E, or letter E.
At this time, we have our what's become our monthly getting to know, or as some of us have come to call it, the Gucci Corner. So Chairman Pro-Tem Trey Gooch to make the introduction. It could be Gucci Corner or Get Gucci with it, either one, maybe.
Gucci Corner. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of Gucci Corner, I would like to introduce Ms. Sonia Stevenson, who has been with the county as our Chief of Human Resource since November 19th, 2007. She was appointed by then County Mayor and the steering committee after being recommended by County Mayor Ernest Burgess. She has a Master of Business Administration with an executive concentration and a Bachelor of Science in Business Education with minor in psychology, secondary education, and business management. And she is also a certified Achieve Global trainer. Maybe you can explain that, because I can't. Prior to her employment with the county, she had a very extensive career with the Kroger Company, beginning February the 2nd, 1981, and lasting until her time with the county. While at Kroger, she worked her way up, beginning as a bagger and ended her career as a Zone A Customer Service and Operations Coordinator. In this position, she was responsible for 21 stores and approximately 3,200 employees. Her primary responsibilities in this role were all HR-related functions, risk management, budgeting, marketing, and customer service. Some of her professional and community affiliations, both past and present, are the National Association of Human Resource Management, Stones River Society of Human Resource Management as a Workforce Development Chair, Diversity Chair, and Treasurer, Main Street Board, and serves on the Christmas Tree Lighting and Taste of Rutherford committees. Employer Supporting Guard and Reserve, where she received the Award of Outstanding Contributor for Impact Leadership Training and the Volunteer Service from President Barack Obama. Convention and Visitor Bureau Board, Tennessee Achieved Mentor, United Way, Leadership Rutherford, National Association of Professional Women, Rutherford Cable, Rutherford Works Mentor, and Center for the Arts Board. She lived in Rutherford County since 1973 and attended Buchanan, Central Middle, Riverdale, and MTSU. She is a wife of Keith Stevenson, a teacher and coach with Wilson County Central High School. She is a mother of 7, a senior at Middle Tennessee Christian School, and the daughter of retired county commissioner and grant coordinator, Faye Elam. She is a member of North Boulevard Church of Christ, where she serves as the children's ministry. Sonia stated that she is humbled and honored to have the opportunity to work for the county. She is inspired and motivated by working with the Board of Commissioners, constitutional officers, county attorney, director, department heads, employees, and the HR team as each day presents the opportunity to learn something new. And I will say, Mr. Chairman and colleagues, that I have known Sonia for a few decades, and especially her time here with the county. And there's never been a time that I think each of you have needed something or asked for something that she was not there and prepared very honest and correct and detailed information. Sonia.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Phillips and Chairman Pro-Tem Gooch. So, yes, they have their presentation up there. I'm not going to read through all of this. I'm just going to give you the highlights. I think you said I had like 3 minutes, and for many of you who know me, I can't open my mouth in 3 minutes, so I'm going to try to stick to it. So the main thing is, what does HR do? Most of you have worked for an employer and know what HR entails. So most of it's policies, programs, and services. We also deal with training, compensation, benefits, ensuring compliance with applicable local, state, and federal laws. Additionally, we work to ensure that the workforce is safe, not only from discrimination and harassment, but also in the drug-free workplace, with an emphasis on organizational communication. Our next slide, please. Okay. So Chairman Pro-Tem Gooch has already gone over my background, so I'm not going to reiterate that again. I'll just go to the next slide. Okay, Lindsay Cooper, I just wanted you to see our team. So you could put a face with the name. Lindsay Cooper is the Assistant Chief of HR. She's been in the HR department since August of 2016. She started as a generalist, and then she worked her way into the Assistant Chief of HR. We share a lot of the same duties. We all pitch in to do where we need to, but some of her key functions, to highlight these, are she works primarily in the budget for the part-time employees. She also assists me in the preparation for the full-time employee salaries, but she is responsible for the part-time employee salaries. She does the public service loan forgiveness. She is responsible for the FMLA and military leaves, unemployment. She does She's the intern supervisor. We get interns from MTSU, David Lipscomb, Motlow. We've had interns from different areas across the state. And some of the other colleges, we had one from Vanderbilt at one time, one from Belmont. So she is the supervisor to make sure that they are completing their task. And she works on open records requests for me. She does the requests that are not employee-related, and I do the requests that are employee-related. Although she does assist with all requests. And she also supervises the benefits specialist. The next slide. Okay. This is Rebecca Basquette. She is the HR generalist. She's been with the county since 2000. She started her career at the Juvenile Detention Center, where she worked her way up to a captain. We had an opening in our department for a generalist, and she applied. We interviewed her, and based on her experiences that she had with the Juvenile Detention Center in her leadership role, it was a nice transition in our department. It gave us an additional viewpoint and perspective from other areas of the county. She is primarily responsible for all things compliance. So she does the FMLA leaves, military leaves, ADA. She helps me with the ADA interactive process, sick leave donations, and she creates and puts out the annual online training for all of the employees in the county that goes out. Those are some of her core functions. Next slide. This is Jennifer Miller. She is an HR specialist. She's been with the county since October of 2017. She started as a part-time employee that was just helping us with our files. She was scan, file, and then we had this position, and she applied and came on full-time, and she has done a fantastic job. She handles a lot of the setup and the maintenance of our HRIS system, which is my benefits channel. She also does the Brady bill, which is for our fire department. Her departments that she's specifically responsible for are public safety, so that's the sheriff's office, fire, ambulance, and she handles those. She does the turnover and new hire reporting. She oversees the volunteers, seasonal employees and interns, the contracted services, and she does our updates for teamwork. Also, she does the open records request filings for the sheriff's office, and she does the orientation updates that we do for all the employees. Next slide. Okay. This is Judy Dotson. She is an HR specialist as well. She started out in April of 2018. She started as an admin support position, and then she went into the HR assistant, and now she is the HR specialist. Some of her key responsibilities are billing. She is very detailed. She does an excellent job in finding errors and making sure that we're not paying for something when we're not supposed to. For the medical employee testing billing, she also works with our Empower, which is our retirement broker for 457 and 401k, and she does our testing for supplies, our testing supplies, job description comparisons, and reference checks. Next is Mark Petty. He is an HR specialist as well. He's been with us since October of 21. He had a background from iHeart, radio, where he did marketing and merchandising, so that's really helped us with he does a lot of our social media posts and does a lot of our marketing, goes to job fairs for recruitment. He assists me with the ADA and Title VI reporting. He also does education fairs, community events, and promotional activities. In addition to that, he does the HR billing side for all of our supplies and everything that's not testing related. Next slide. Finally, I have been with the county, as Commissioner Gooch stated, since 2007. Some of my primary responsibilities, in addition to what the others do, is I handle the ADA, Title VI, and open records requests for the county. I also do the TCRS, retirement, military, and disability. I do the Social Security, disability, and Medicare for our employees. Grief assistance, critical incidents response if we have something happen in one of our facilities and need to bring in individuals to help with grief and whatever they've been processing through. Also, the alcohol and drug treatment programs, ADA accommodations, the county scholarship, EAP referrals, ADA, Title VI, the EEOC, any of the complaints that are legal in nature, SOP reviews, I mean, just a lot of other things, but that's just a highlight for those who don't get the pleasure of listening to me at all the steering committees and didn't already know this. So I hate to repeat that for the ones who do know it, but that's kind of the highlights of what HR does. Are there any questions? Nope. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. That department stays awfully busy, as you guys can probably guess from that statement there. No public comments, as we said. To get right into elections and confirmations, steering vice chair, Chairman Commissioner Pettus Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our elections and confirmations. Item 1 is the election of notaries. Commissioners, you'll notice that the listing of notaries may be found on your iPad. Mr. Chairman, I move to confirm the election of these individuals as Rutherford County notaries.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item 2, steering would like to announce one conservation board vacancy. This is a 5-year term beginning February 2024. Item 3, we wish to announce one vacancy on the Smyrna Rutherford County Airport Authority. This term will expire March 2028. Mr. Chairman, this concludes the business for election and confirmations.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. Item H, resolution to approve the consent agenda. Once again, call on our Chairman Pro-Tem, Trey Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have read the consent agenda and find everything on it to be appropriate. I have not heard anything from Commissioner Oliver, so I'm assuming everything is okay. Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda. And a second. Any questions? For this, I think we should probably be on the board, so if you would, please cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
20 yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item J, well, we'll skip that and go on down to K and get into our standing committees. Budget, Finance, and Investment Committee, Chairman Robert Peay.
Good evening, everyone. First item is a resolution to expand our DUI court. Be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the general fund be amended as follows: for drug court, and increased revenues of DUIEP, other direct of $19,358, a decrease in an unassigned fund balance of $6,452, increase expenditures for DUIEP travel, $500, and also an increase of drugs and medical supplies, $44,680. DUI EP data processing equipment, $2,500. A decrease expenditures, DUI EP other salaries, $4,500. DUI EP Social Security, $280. Pensions, $500. Employee and dependents, $8,500. That's for insurance. Employee medical, $65. DUI EP contracts with private agencies, $6,200. And private agencies, DUI EP office supplies, $1,825. Resolved this 14th day of March 2024. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
We have a motion and a second to approve budget item 1A.
One thing, Mr. Chairman, one thing I would like to mention is we've actually approved this. What this is basically a bookkeeping. Basically, we're getting in line with. We made an estimate when we got the grant. Basically, we've got this grant and it's extended. That EP at the end of the DUI court is for expansion program. But anyway, this just brings us in line. This is something we have already approved.
Questions or comments? Again, for this will be on the board. Please cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
20 yes.
Motion passes. Chairman Peay.
Budget item B, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that the Highway Fund be amended as follows. And basically, these are due to asphalt price increases and also an asphalt favor, as you'll see. Highway and bridge maintenance, a decrease in assigned fund balance of $700,000. A decrease in expenditures for truck drivers, $50. Increase expenditures of longevity pay, $50. Asphalt, $700,000. Capital outlay, a decrease in assigned fund balance of $500,000 for an asphalt paver. Increased expenditures for highway equipment, $500,000. Resolved this 14th day of March 2024. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, Commissioner Johnson. Questions? Once again, on the board, please cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
20 yes.
Budget item 1AB passes.
Budget item C. This is actually not anything we need to vote on, but it's for presentation only. We are doing some refinancing, and when we do that, or refunding, we have to present per the comptroller's office to you as commissioners. And Michael, I think you need to make a comment here too.
So I want to point out two things. This does have to be presented to every commissioner, and it is available on our website. That is also a requirement. So it is available as an attachment on SharePoint, and then is presented to you tonight. It's not a voting item. And then the next thing that I would like to point out is this does give an estimate for the savings that they think we will get. We think our savings will be a little more than what their estimate is. We think our savings will be somewhere in the $700,000 to $1 million range. They give a conservative estimate in their letter and in the detailed application. This will go in conjunction with the next item, item 1D, but this is for presentation only tonight.
Questions?
Okay, we'll move on now to budget item D, and of course, Commissioners, you have that available on your iPads and also on SharePoint. Item D has about 40 pages here. I'm going to read the preface on this, and this is basically explaining our resolution for our bond issuance. This will cover both the refunding that we spoke of and the new schools. The new school part is $30 million. The refunding part is approximately 19, I think. Anyway, I'll read this first item. The rest of that is available to the public and to you if you want to read through the rest of those 45 pages I have, and it takes a while. A resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation, refunding, and school bonds of Rutherford County, Tennessee in the aggregate principal amount of approximately $49 million in one or more series, making the provision for the issuance, sale, and payment of said bonds, establishing the terms thereof and the disposition of proceeds therefrom, and providing for the levy of taxes for the payment of principal, of premium, if any, and interest with these bonds. Mr. Chairman, on this 14th day of March, I so move for this approval.
I have a motion and a second. Questions or comments?
Question.
Commissioner Oliver.
Mr. Smith, can you kind of explain this like I'm 6 years old, maybe?
So the reason you see a dollar amount of, I'm going to kind of explain a couple things here. So the reason you see a dollar amount of $49 million, I want to cover that first. Because if you remember, the school system put approximately somewhere between $34 and $36 million of their own money towards the new Batey Elementary School. So $30 million of this 49 is the bond portion. So that school will be a little over $60 million as estimated. So $30 million of this is going directly for the new funding of the Batey Elementary School. That's going to leave approximately $19 million, which is, of course, this is all estimates based on where we'll be when we actually sell the bonds. That $19 million is a bond left over from 2014 that is callable on 10 years. So this is the 10th year. So it is callable. And if it's within 90 days of the call option, which this bond is from 2014, we are allowed to do a tax-exempt refunding. And so we are exercising that option with thinking we can save approximately $80,000 to $90,000 per year by doing that. Now, that bond originally was a 20-year debt issuance in 2014. So we have 10 years left on that bond. We are going to refinance or reissue another bond to pay that one off, but it's only going to be a 10-year bond, and we assume we can drop almost 100 basis points on our interest rate. We think we can drop from around 3.5 to down towards 2.5. That's where our savings comes from on the refunding. Now, the one thing that's unique about this one that we have not done in many, many years here is the new money we are also going to borrow on a 10-year bond. We generally do 20 here. We think, based on the current economic conditions, the current capacity of our debt service fund, we can swing that, and it would save us somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 to $8 million. Could be a little more, a little less, based on the interest rate over the life of that bond. So, to recap, this $49 million is going to have two things in it: $30 million for the elementary school, and approximately $19 million that we're refinancing or refunding from a previous bond in 2014.
And it's 10 years instead of 20 years.
Yes, and in this resolution, it does give us the option to pivot to 20 years based on interest rates on the day we sell the bond. We don't anticipate needing that, but we have to have that in there in case something were to go wrong. We want to be able to pivot to get the best financial deal for the county. Obviously, in an emergency situation, if there's an act of God event, we could pull the entire bond sale, and we would if there was something that went really wrong. But we need that flexibility to where if there's something with interest rates or something with the Fed that happens, we want to pivot. But as of right now, the plan is for a 10-year issuance. And if you'll notice in there, it says in one or more series. The current plan is to do a one-series bond issue. But we would have, if interest rates were not advantageous for the county, we could split the two, or we could cancel both sales. So, for example, if interest rates on that refunding were to tick up and we wouldn't get any savings, we would cancel that and just keep the bond we have now.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman. I'd like to add, if you go back and look at what we have done, the Budget Committee has worked pretty diligently about trying to refinance or rebudget monies through the years. And I know over the last 15, 16 years, it's around $26 million we've been able to save. I'm not sure what the savings on this will be. A lot of that depends on what the interest rates will be, but it's several $1 million that would be added to it, if I'm not mistaken. Michael, if you want to address that.
The refunding itself, the comptroller's estimate in that presentation document that you saw a second ago on item C, their estimate was in the $600,000 to $700,000 range. That is a very conservative net present value estimate that they make. We really think, based on current interest rates, we could get somewhere closer to $1 million is what we're thinking on that refunding alone. And then by shifting from a 20-year to a 10 on the $30 million, we think we could save somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 7, even potentially a little more if interest rates come in good, just on that one issuance alone. If we borrowed on 20 years, it could cost us about $43 million over the life of the bond. If we borrow on 10 years, it may cost us about $34 million to $33 million. So we really feel strongly that that's kind of the way to go to save that much money on one issuance. The other thing I'll point out that I believe a question was asked in our budget is we have quite a bit of bond capacity rolling off in the next 10 or 11 years, quite a bit of bond debt being paid off. And so we would like this one to roll off at the same time as well. And it almost cuts our annual debt payments by anywhere from 10 to $12 million a year over the next 10 years. And so we're really trying to set ourselves up long term, not just look at the next 2 years, we want to look at the next 5 or 10 years out.
Thank you, Michael.
Other questions? Ready to vote? If you would, we'll be on the board, so please cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
20 yes.
Item K1D passes. Chairman Peay.
That concludes our business from budget this evening. Our next scheduled meeting is April the 4th, which happens to also be my birthday. So come to the meeting.
We'll go back up to item J on our agenda now, which is our public hearings. And I'll call on our planning director, Doug Demosi. Mr. Demosi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doug Demosi, County Planning Director. Good evening to everyone. We have 2 rezonings for your consideration tonight. The first is for property located along Franklin Road. This is by Mr. Bill Charles. The existing zoning, there's a couple of aspects to this request, which I'll get into in a moment, but they're looking for a rezoning from RM, residential medium density, to planned unit development along with a PUD amendment. The applicant's proposing to make an addition to the existing Southern Harmony development by adding approximately 124 acres on the south side. This is what we've been calling the Hartley Tract. Like the existing development, this addition will also be for an age-restricted community, those 55 and above. The existing design standards also apply to the new lots, and the applicant has provided a pattern book, which I did include on your iPads and on a SharePoint for you tonight. As I stated, there are 2 components to this proposal. The first is the addition of the Hartley Tract, which is approximately 124 acres in size. It's currently zoned RM, and they're asking for the PUD zoning. The second aspect is to amend the entire Southern Harmony PUD to include this tract and to make some other modifications. Overall, you see the total number of lots will change from about 1,150 to 1,445, and the overall density is changing just a little bit as well. They've also kind of combine two of the product types, scenic and distinctive. The pattern book's going to allow them to choose either or as they move forward with that. I won't go into a whole lot of detail with the actual development itself. The applicant is present and can answer those questions. Again, I will point you to the pattern book, which is included on your iPads. But I will say that the changes as far as the products themselves, the type of houses, the architecture of those, all that is remaining the same as in the existing approved Southern Harmony development. This property does have access to existing public rights-of-way along Franklin Road through two private access points. I will mention that these are all private streets in this development. There is one public right-of-way to the Burgess Farm lots. Those are separate from the overall development, but that road is going to remain public for about 9 to 10 lots. There's no cross-connection between those two. All access points and entrances to this development are designed with 3 travel lanes each for circulation into and out of the development. And turn lanes are being added as part of the existing development to the primary entrances off of Franklin Road. Each single-family unit will have a 2-car garage and driveways to accommodate at least 2 parking spaces outside of those garages. Again, I will point you to the diagrams inside the pattern book. They did submit a revised traffic study. Most of the improvements that were recommended in that were already previously recommended. There were a couple of additions for some additional road improvements that need to be made, so that'll be part of their approval as well. Planned developments are required to set aside a minimum of 10% open space. This development has provided about 175 acres, or 25% of the total site. Again, a more detailed breakdown can be found in the pattern book. Amenities, the combination of both of these developments into one, if you will, the Hartley tract will also have access to the proposed amenities that will be part of the Southern Harmony development as well. Excuse me. The Planning Commission did have several questions about the drainage of the property and the steps taken to reduce the runoff from this property to downstream properties, including additional ponds if necessary. They also asked about the lot size and width, especially as related to utility placement. Again, since these streets are private, they're able to do a little different than what they could do if these were public streets. They actually had a pretty detailed utility diagram that showed the almost exact placement of where water lines, gas lines, step system lines were going to be in relation to the step lots, the septic tank area, those easements and whatnot. There was also some questions regarding water supply as opposed to the runoff, and also some impact fees. After the public hearing, the Planning Commission did have some further questions on the water supply, which was answered by a representative from CUD, and also the lot width in relation to the utility placement. Following discussion, the Planning Commission did recommend approval by a unanimous vote. As I stated, the applicant is present and will be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Any questions for staff?
Question,
Oliver.
please.
Yes.
You say this is a planned development for ages 55 and up?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And what if someone lives with them under 55?
They have some pretty robust HOA covenants. The applicant may want to speak a little closer to that, but they gave us some examples when this was originally proposed back in 2020 about a situation where if 2 people are married, one may be over 55, the other one may not be. If one unfortunately happens to pass away, they work with that person, they have to move out at some point, and they give them time, obviously, to do that. The applicant can probably provide more detail than that, but this is not the first community like this in this area. We actually visited one in Spring Hill, and they talked a lot to us about that same issue as well. So it's something they've dealt with before.
So children and grandchildren can't move back home with parents?
I think they're, and I'm probably speaking out of turn a little bit here, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they're allowed to stay there for a certain number of days in each year, but they're not supposed to be permanent residents there.
Other questions? Would like to hear from the developer? Representative?
Matt Taylor of SEC at 850 Middle Tennessee Boulevard here in Murfreesboro. Doug did a really good job explaining the project. If you were on the commission several years ago when it was originally proposed, we're keeping the same quality, same style, all the commitments that were there before. We're just taking those and expanding those a little further to the south. Doug did a good job explaining about the child and the under 55. I believe it's actually 6 months, and that is kind of an emergency situation where maybe the child's parents pass away or needs to be removed from the home, something like that. It is definitely not a permanent situation at all. And they have, all that goes into their HOA, and all those rights are given by the government to allow my client to restrict the 55 plus. And so it kind of builds all that stuff into the HOA.
Chairman Reed.
Matt, you might want to explain to the commission about how y'all go beyond what we require for retention.
Yes, sir. So we obviously, this area is very sensitive, not necessarily this property, but the downstream properties, the Royal Glen area, the Shores Road area, receives runoff from this property and the surrounding areas. And so with the original proposal, the developer did several things to try to mitigate any impacts that they would have, as well as to help the downstream neighbors. A few of those things are they're preserving and enhancing about 20 to 25 acres of existing wetlands. Today, that you go out there, you would not think they're wetlands. We normally think of wetlands as cattails and marshy areas. These are really just areas alongside the existing stream that the cattle have degraded over the years. And so the developer is spending a lot of money and time and effort to put walking trails, put signage to educate people, to do new soil enhancements as well as plantings there. And we all know and have heard over the last several years, wetlands help recharge the groundwater. So instead of it just running off, it soaks into the ground better through the wetlands. Additionally, they have oversized the detention ponds. If you have been out on site, one of those first detention ponds is actually constructed today. You can see the size and scale of that feature. And so those ponds are meant to basically reduce the rate of runoff by about 50% more than what the county would typically require. And so if 100 buckets of water could run off, those ponds have reduced that to about 50, if I remember the numbers correctly. But they have greatly reduced that runoff through this stormwater system. And one of the first things that we made a commitment to staff when we started talking about the Hartley piece is we would take that same commitment that was given in the original project to this project as well. So we want to continue that further south. As a matter of fact, with this project, we're capturing almost the southern edge of the watershed. And so we're going to be able to make a big difference with these ponds and what you see going on down at Royal Glen.
Other questions? Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments for staff at this time? Not, we'll be ready for our public hearing, and at this time, I'll declare the public hearing open for item REZ 24-006, rezoning request for Bill Charles for Kingwood Lane owners. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this rezoning request, please come forward. Anyone? Seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Commissioner Romel McMurry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I have personally, from time to time, 3 or 4 times of the week, I've driven by this piece of property, and I've been in contact with Mr. Charles as well. I feel like that they have gone well beyond the requirements of the county. I will say, as I stated last meeting, that I don't meet the age group yet to qualify to live there. No, I'm joking. I was coming through Franklin last night and everything was lit up, and so it's going to be a great addition to the west side of Murfreesboro. So I make a motion to approve the PUD amendment and the RM to PUD for the addition to the Southern Harmony subdivision.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Once again, questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye. Is there any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. Mr. Demosi.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah, short people problems. The struggle is real. Our second application and final application for tonight is by Robert Kirby for JBL Partners. This is located at 5418 Franklin Road. The existing zoning is RM, and the proposed zoning is office professional. The applicant's proposing to zone this property to build a self-storage facility. Now, this use is classified as a general personal service in our zoning ordinance. So that means even if the zoning is approved, they still have to go through the Board of Zoning Appeals for a special exception. Approving the zoning does not approve this specific use. A site plan, concept plan, has been submitted with your agenda packets. It's included on your iPads. It's not binding since this is not a plan development like the last application we just considered, but it'll give you an idea of their development plans. They're showing a construction of 4 buildings totaling approximately 35,000 square feet with a total of about 75,500 square feet of impervious area. It does not appear at this time that an office or manager's residence is being proposed. However, saying that none is required. Access will be along Franklin Road. The applicant is proposing a paved driveway from the entrance into the development. Access and maneuvering areas would have to be designed to meet county requirements as shown on an engineered site plan. Any development we see has to be submitted as a site plan, especially when we're talking about non-residential development. Since Franklin Road is a state road, any new or improved access points would also have to be approved by TDOT. Properties zoned office professional are required to install a type 1 buffer adjacent to any residentially zoned properties. Since the property to the west is zoned commercially within the city limits of Murfreesboro, there's no additional buffering required on that side. However, there will be some additional buffering around the residential sides that there are. Now, since this use requires a special exception by the BZA can place reasonable conditions upon special exception approvals, which could include, if felt necessary, additional buffering or screening for that particular property, and our performance standards would also be required to be met. The Planning Commission did, during our meeting, had some questions about this concept plan. At the time, currently, the architectural plans have not been completed. That's not unusual for a piece of property going through the zoning process just for a conventional zone like office professional. They do anticipate buildings facing Franklin Road to have a brick masonry facade. They will also have access via security gate and a small office, although again, one is not required. The applicant's representative also stated that existing mobile homes on the property, which are currently there, would be removed. There was also some discussion about the flooding issues on this property, the cleanup of the site, and also traffic issues, specifically the need for a traffic study. We typically don't see a traffic study for a development of this size, especially when it's mini warehouses, self-storage that we're talking about. However, with the site plan, if staff does feel one is necessary, we can require one to be submitted. During the public hearing, some concerns were raised, including using the property for a more community-oriented use, like potentially a food truck park. There was also some comments made by one gentleman who spoke, very good comments regarding the floodway and floodplain. A good portion of this site is impacted by the 100-year floodplain and the floodway. These are areas, especially the floodway, that you really don't want to see any encroachments in. However, we did explain during the meeting that any buildup in the floodplain, which is allowed, would have to be offset by compensating cuts, so you wouldn't be allowed to take away any of the storage of the floodplain. And there was also some discussion about the proximity of other storage units in the area. Following discussion, the Planning Commission did vote to recommend approval by a vote of 7-4 and 1 against. And again, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for staff? None? We're ready for our public hearing. This time I'll declare the public hearing open for item REZ 24-007, rezoning request for Robert Kirby for JBL Partners. This public hearing is open. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this rezoning request, please come forward. Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Carl Reynolds, 110 Carroll Drive. We have interest in some of these properties because this specific piece of property has a restrictive covenant that was established back in the mid-1950s, that this was supposed to be residential use only. And it's been that way for years and years. It was sold to Arnold Hobbs back in 1957. This property came from J.R. Freeman and R.L. Freeman, and it was, my particular property was sold in 1972 to Mr. William Dye and John Ainsworth. All these properties that we are talking about still have these restrictive covenants on it. There was no end date on it, so according to law, they should last for about 99 years, which hasn't been met yet. So there needs to be a lot of thought in that. As far as I know, the only ways that this can be resolved is by everybody concerned to sign off on it, which I don't think is going to be the course, or the plaintiffs can take it to a court and have the court resolve that issue. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this rezoning request, please come forward. Good evening. Name and address, please.
Jennifer Blake. I am the owner at 123 Carroll Drive, as well as Franklin Road, Lot 0, which is touching the east side of the proposed lot. I would like to thank the committee. Actually, I've never done this before. I've never been to these, so 2 in a row, and just kind of listening and hearing that you're addressing the concerns that we brought up at the last meeting. That was really nice to hear, and I appreciate that from Doug. So the tree lot that you're looking at next to that property, that is the Lot 0 that we purchased this past year to build a house on. All those trees will need to be cleared to provide ingress egress to that lot. That ingress egress there is in the flood zone, which is also on this proposed property. And by raising one property, we're concerned with what that's going to change on our lot as we're trying to build on that. As well as the safety for the sidewalks there, the visibility, and we'd just like to make sure that everything is addressed properly, and I appreciate the fact that the other issues have been addressed.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. I want to ask if our county attorney could comment on the legalities of that the first person raised.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Generally speaking, covenants and restrictions of either HOAs or otherwise in recordable form are applicable to homeowners, and they are private in nature, contractual and private in nature, and the county doesn't have the ability to enforce those. Those would be, if in dispute, would be argued about between the private homeowners. So assuming that it otherwise meets the county's local regulations, the county doesn't have the authority to enforce those private restrictions amongst the homeowners.
Breaking no laws.
Well, as long as this body determines that this is a proper rezoning, and otherwise, as it per the planning department has met our local requirements, the county is not in a position to enforce the private covenants and restrictions amongst the homeowners.
Thank you, Nick.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Call on our Chairman Pro-Tem, Trey Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a little background on this. I was the one planning commissioner that voted no. The reason I did that was I just wanted more time to get some information on the flooding issue, or any information with the restricted covenant and any potential traffic concerns. And I got the information that I'm requested from our staff, and I'm satisfied that all these issues can be worked out. So my motion is to approve the staff comment
Have a motion to approve? And a second. Other discussion? We have a motion and a second to approve rezoning request REZ 24-007 for Robert Kirby. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. Mr. Demosi.
I'm finished, thank you.
This time we'll get back to our standing committee reports. Item K2, Public Safety. Chairman Pettus read.
Mr. Chairman, we have no report, but our next meeting will be March 25th at 5:30 in this room.
Thank you. Item K3, Health and Education Committee. Chairman Phil Dodd.
Thank you, Chairman. Vice Chair Phil Wilson placed this flyer on your desk. We just want to give a shout out and recognize the fine arts programs in Rutherford County schools. This has some statistics of their success and a barcode for you guys to scan, and you can see what's happening in your district. Our next meeting is, help me somebody, March 26, 2024, 5:30 p.m.
Thank you, Phil. Item K4, Property Management Committee, Chairman Alan McAdoo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have no report tonight, but I would like to thank our county attorney for coming to our last meeting and clearing up a lot of legal questions about parking. And it was very, very, very instrumental in us making some decisions and looking at that going forward. Our next meeting will be March the 28th at 5:30 p.m. in this room. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman McAdoo. Item K5, Public Works and Planning Committee, Chairman Anthony Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have no report tonight. Our next meeting will be April the 2nd.
Thank you. Item K6, Steering Legislative and Governmental Committee, Chairman Craig Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, what we are voting on is a resolution, and it is on the mineral severance tax. And a lot of the attention that we have is going towards our impact fees. And I was looking at other items to where maybe we can raise some revenue. Mineral severance tax is a tax on sand, gravel, sandstone, chert, and limestone is taken from the ground in Rutherford County. Right now, right now it is at 15 cents per ton, I believe. There's a bill, HB 2278 and Senate Bill 2319, and this is to raise that rate from 15 cents to 45 cents, up to 45 cents. I've just been informed that it failed in Senate. I've just been informed that it has failed in the House. So I question whether to have this resolution. However, I'd like to ask you commissioners to pass this resolution because it's letting the state know that we are looking for ways to increase revenues instead of property taxes. If this had passed, and it does have some legs to it, so it's not completely dead, but it'll, right now we are receiving $514,000, and this goes to our highway department. And if this increases, it could get us up to a penny, which is about 1.5 million. So every bit counts. I suggest, and I ask that you pass this resolution so that other counties will see what we're doing, other counties will see that we are trying to go forward with this. And on a personal note, I have asked Commissioner Reed to come up here and read this. My father had a massive heart attack, and he's in critical condition, and I've been down there since Saturday, and I am exhausted. And I'm very tired, and I think I would probably mess this resolution up if I read it, because I can barely see right now. So I'm going to let Commissioner Reed read that, so thanks.
Thank you, Chairman. Resolution in support of HB 2278 and SB 2319 and request additional amendments to TCA 677203. Whereas pursuant to TCA 677201, Rutherford County levies a mineral severance tax on all sand, gravel, sandstone, chert, and limestone severed from the ground within Rutherford County, with said tax being collected by the state of Tennessee, and thereafter all remaining revenue after deductions for the administration collection of the taxes being remitted to the county on a quarterly basis and applied to the county road and fund. Whereas Rutherford County collected $514,326.01 and mineral severance tax for fiscal year 2023. And whereas Rutherford County assesses a rate of 15 cents per ton for the mineral severance tax as authorized by state law. And whereas there currently is before the General Assembly HB 2278 and SB 2319, copies of which are attached hereto Collective Exhibit A, which seeks to amend TCA 677203 by allowing a county legislative body to increase the rate of tax up to 45 cents per ton on sand, gravel, and sandstone, chert, and limestone severed from the ground in the county. And whereas the reflective in the fiscal note for HB 2278 and HB 2319, it passed by the General Assembly. The General Assembly assumes that almost all counties assessing a mineral severance tax will increase the rate to 45 per ton, which will increase state revenue by approximately $165,400 for FY 24-25 and local revenue across the state to approximately $14,537,800 for FY 24-25. And whereas Rutherford County has experienced a large amount of community growth and traffic on all our county road system, as well as large increases in the cost for material, equipment, and labor to construct, maintain, and repair our county road system over the last 40 years. During this time, the county mineral severance tax rate has remained the same, thus requiring a shifting of these additional infrastructure's costs onto the property owners of Rutherford County, requiring the debt to be issued for multiple much-needed county road projects over the years. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners that this body does hereby show our support for HB 2278 and SB 2319, amended TCA 677203 by allowing a county legislative body to increase the rate of tax up to 45 cents per ton on sand, gravel, sandstone, chert, and limestone severed by the ground in the county. Be it further resolved that, at the minimum, the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners urges the General Assembly to amend TCA 677203 to provide for an exemption to the 15-cent tax rate for counties with a population of not less than 341,400, nor more than 341,500, according to the 2020 U.S. Census, as follows. A, authorizing the Rutherford County Commission by 2/3 affirmative majority vote to increase the county minimum severance tax rate from 15 cents to 45 cents per ton on sand, gravel, sandstone, chert, and limestone severed from the ground in the county. B, 12 months after the preliminary 30-cent increase as described in subsection A takes effect, this exemption to CCA 677203 will authorize the Rutherford County Commission by resolution with a 2/3 majority affirmative vote to increase the county mineral severance tax rate annually to reflect the percentage of change in the average consumer price index, all items city average, as published by the United States Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics for the immediate preceding fiscal year, provided that the maximum rate is not increased by more than 4 cents in the year, or 4% in the year. Be it further resolved that the county clerk shall send the copies of this resolution to the members of the General Assembly representing Rutherford County. Resolved this 14th day of March, 2024. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner James.
I know it's dead at the state, but supporting something like this, I would urge caution from my fellow commissioners out here. Think of the long term. If we raise them, triple their rate 15 cents to 45 cents, they're just going to pass that down to the consumer. And this is a clear example of we're going to literally raise our bills. It says in here how we're experiencing problems with traffic and need more roads and increase our material and labor and equipment costs for them to maintain and repair the road system. This is a perfect example. Most of that stuff goes right into our infrastructure that we're going to end up paying the extra fees for. It's basic business. They're going to pass it right back down to us, except they're going to add a little more to it for their administrative fees for them to put it together and go through, most likely. But at the very least, it's raising that percentage 3 times on ourselves. So we can get a little revenue a penny now with this, but within a year, 3 years max, how much are we actually going to be making off of it versus losing from raising our own rates? We have an affordability issue out there. We actually have a chance to stop the beginning of it and not create more issues for us to have to pay later. Thank you.
Other comments? Chairman Robert Peay.
I was telling, and thank you for saying Bob, by the way. I go by Robert, but that's because I'm a junior, and it was a little hard when you yelled Bob or Robert at the same time. But anyway, my father, who was a county commissioner here over 50 years ago, is the one who brought this tax to us. About 50 years, and that hasn't changed in those 50 years. This bill would allow us to charge up to 45 cents, not necessarily go to 45 cents, but it's just to point out it's been 50 years and there's been no change in this that I'm aware of. Didn't go exactly the way he wanted it to go. He wanted that money to go straight to the coffers of the county, and they're getting spread out in other directions too. But I would suggest that we do this, and the reason I say that, we are looking for alternatives other than property tax, and this is just sending a message to our legislators that, hey, we are looking. We're not just looking at impact fees. We are looking wherever we can to help our citizens better afford to live here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Comment.
Commissioner Oliver.
Yes, sir. Since the bills have died or failed, would you like me to rise? Sure, I'll rise. Since the bills have failed, would it not be prudent of us just to delete the bill numbers and just say amend the code? Why would we still include the bill when we already know the bills have failed?
I'm not 100% sure that it's completely failed. Can you clarify that if you could?
It has failed in the House, and it's been I think it's been rolled, Will, in the Senate. So that's still open. But the wording of the bill is good for us. So that's why we're on this. And you're fixing to hear from Will Demosi, and I think that's a question you can throw at him because he'll be able to tell you more how this craziness is. So Hope, I wish I could give you an answer, but I know that what's in this bill benefits Rutherford County. And it's us simply, this bill could be rolled over, it could be reintroduced. So that's one of the reasons that we jumped on that. So I say we need to pass this resolution and stay in support of that bill.
My question was not really about the content. I can understand the content, and I know we're looking for funding. I was just curious about why are we still using that particular bill number in the resolution if it's mute? But are you saying that it's not?
It could come back up again, so this bill can be reintroduced. It's just like our impact fees that you're fixing to hear about. It's been voted down, but we're going to reintroduce it. So I think that we need to be on this bill. I think we need to go with the counties that are on it, and I think it will be reintroduced. Again, I want you to be, when Will comes up here, he'll be able to tell you more about the mechanics of it.
Since it's not completely dead, that information will probably be useful in the resolution. Other questions? Once again, we have a motion and a second in support of the resolution in support of HB 2278 and SB 2319. All those in favor of the support? Want to go on the board? For this will be on the board. If you would, please cast your vote.
Anyone that did not vote and wishes to vote, or anyone who would like to change your vote, you may do so now.
Record the vote.
19 yes, 1 no.
Motion passes. Thank you. This brings us into other business, and without objection, your chairman would like to make a statement over some of the issues that have happened within our county over the last month since our last meeting, especially over the last couple of weeks. And without objection, I'd like to make those comments. As you guys know, we have been working really hard last legislative session and this legislative session to come up with alternative revenue sources rather than constantly going to the taxpayer. In essence, property taxes is pretty much the only revenue source that we have that we can raise any substantial money, especially when it comes to brick and mortar. Our efforts have been thwarted. Last year, a resolution was shot down in a House committee. This year, there were several of us that went to a House subcommittee a week ago this past Wednesday, and Representative Charlie Baum was carrying the bill for us. The bill died in that subcommittee. Once again, it is not dead, but it really is on life support, which actually means that it was rolled and it could come back up. The chances of it getting a different reception, I'm not sure what those chances are. But since that meeting, there have been all of these things that have, a lot of different things that have come up that have related to so-and-so said this, or somebody said that, or a lot of information that I consider to be somewhat of misinformation that's out there. And I'm not going to get into name calling. I don't like that, and I won't do it. But I will get into the fact, from my perspective, and this again is my perspective and my opinion, is that some of the things that are being said are inaccurate to the point to where they're disturbing to me personally, because I have the feeling that there are opportunities for us to create additional revenue, and our focus has been on our resolution that was turned into a bill to implement the same taxing authority, growth taxing authority, that the cities within Rutherford County has, and some contiguous counties such as Wilson and Williamson County have, that we don't have. That's the bill that we've been focusing on. I know in the past some have tried to, made attempts to refocus our attention, adding confusion to what this county wanted. It's happened a little bit this year as well. And if you guys can recall, ever since last fall, we have refocused time and time again on our bill. Our bill is to have alternative taxes in the exact same, from the exact same source that our cities have. We want that flexibility. This commission passed that resolution by a 20-to-1 vote. When other alternative revenues came up, we've refocused those that have brought them up on our bill. That doesn't mean that we're opposed to anything else, but what it means is focus on what we ask you to do. Focus on our bill. Our bill. I'm not trying to say that other bills aren't good. They aren't something that we could and would consider, but our focus has been and remains on the resolution that we turned into a bill and presented in Nashville. Once again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate, and I think most of us appreciate, Representative Charlie Baum in carrying that bill for us, or attempting to carry that bill for us. Since that day, there's been, it appears that there's been an additional bill, and I think it got out of subcommittee day before yesterday, increasing the ability for us to raise additional funds through our adequate facilities, and that is from $1 up to $1.50. There have been comments that have come to me and others on this commission that there's been some of us that have tried to sabotage that bill, and I'm here to tell you that that is inaccurate. There have been statements made, we are not focusing on what you're saying, we want you to focus on what we're saying. But that doesn't mean we're opposed to that bill, but it means we want you to focus on the bill that we presented. Focus on our bill. That doesn't mean that we're opposed to this other bill at all. But our comments are, here's what we want. The other things are okay, but here's what we want. We're not working against this other bill. We're not. As a matter of fact, if that bill passes and it can create additional revenue, who in their right mind would turn it down? So, to let you know, from my perspective, the last 2 weeks have been some of the most confusing in my political career. I hate to say political career because I don't feel like I'm a politician. I worked in the private sector for well over 40 years and I retired. And the only reason I'm up here is because my neighbors voted me into this job and they say, I want you to do it. And that's the only reason I'm here. I have no aspirations of a higher office, never have, and never will. My focus is on Rutherford County, and I think most of you that are sitting in this room are focused on Rutherford County. And I think your people, the people who voted for you, have asked you to support the bill that came out of this commission. And that's my point tonight, and my only point is that it's our focus. It has been, and it will continue to be until that bill fails. So, with that being said, there are some, maybe some additional comments, some things that came up. Point blank, I believe we had several commissioners that attended the Farm Bureau Legislative Review Session, and Chairman Reed was there. I believe Jonathan Beverly was there. Help me, who else was there? Which other commissioners were there? But there were several commissioners that were there and listened to our legislative delegation and some of the comments that were come out of that. I'll ask Chairman Reed, since it's first-hand information and not second-hand information, and I'd ask Commissioner Beverly to kind of, if he would, to verify that some of these things were said at that meeting. And once again, we are focused on what we've asked for, and that's our bill to create additional revenue through the same authority that was given our cities and contiguous counties. Reed, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've just got to say, though, that Wednesday that we went down there, and I want to say the fact that I certainly appreciate the commissioners that took that trip down there. And in fact, we left this courthouse here in a positive mood, several of us that went that way. And I know it's Commissioner McAdoo and Commissioner Peay and Commissioner Rather. Commissioner James was down there. I don't know if I've missed anyone else down there that day. Our director of schools was down there. And to say that a county delegation was not well representative, it was. It was well represented. Prepared to present something that we felt was important to this county, representing our people, as you have said, Chairman. We had others that were there too to help us in any way that we can. We saw the chairman of the subcommittee. He was very supportive of what we were trying to do. And I've just got to say this about that, Chairman, is that as that come forward and Representative Bond come forward and very professionally tried to present that, and that committee sat there and did nothing. You've ever sat in a silence that was so silent that you could almost cut it? It was, in a way, it was somewhat embarrassing. I spent over 40 years for Tennessee Farm Bureau. I didn't work for an insurance company. I worked for the organization, and I spent time down there on that floor. I actually even worked in the Capitol Hill Press Corps. I saw a lot of legislation go through down there. I worked for a lot of legislation down there. I sat through a lot of committee meetings. I've never seen that before. But the only thing that hit me between the eyes is that we brought a county delegation there to present what they felt that they needed. And it was not heard. It didn't get a motion. It didn't get a second. And they sat just like what you would see right here and never moved with their head down. That was it. That was it. And I thought, here I sit in our state government, and they will not even listen to the people that we represent back in a county. And I got to just tell you this, guys, that something hit me there that I thought of something I went through. I told you I worked for Farm Bureau and their legislative, and at one time we were trying to get a trade deal, well, of all people, Cuba. And I went with 25 farmers to Cuba. That was in 2001 when America was not allowing people to even go to Cuba, and we had to go to the President of the United States allowing us to do that due to the fact we had farmers in Tennessee that had too much milk. Cuba had none. And we wanted to attempt to do that, and President Bush said, you can go. But if anything goes wrong down there, don't look for me for help, because I can't do it. But I said I would like to help the farmers if they can pull this off. We flew down there in a twin-engine prop, landed on the Havana runway, and spent a week there. A week. The loneliest I've ever been in my life was seeing that airplane fly off on a Monday afternoon, knowing he wasn't coming back to Friday, with no communication with the United States. But we had met with the entire cabinet of Castro, talking to him about the possibility. We left, went back on Friday. Only place in my life I've ever been spit on. Only place I've ever been spit on. But yet, I can remember on a Thursday night before we left on Friday, we were to see Castro, and the word got out that we were going to go meet with him. There was a courtyard that filled with people, and they were afraid for our safety, so we didn't go. But it gave me the opportunity to sort of slip around and talk to some people if I found anybody who could speak English. And I remember one old gentleman sitting in a chair, and I went to him, and I just started talking to him. I said, what do you think our problems are? Old gentleman sitting there, and he just sort of looked at me, and he said, it's not you and me. What do you mean? He said, it's not your people and my people. He said, it's your government and my government. They can't talk. And that afternoon when I saw right there, I said, not him and me, it's a situation it looks like our two governments aren't talking to each other. Our county government and our state government are not talking to each other. And I said, we can't do this. We can't keep doing this. We're not talking to each other because we were shut out, folks. Well, then, last Friday, we were over here at the Farm Bureau. And they have what they have is called an annual legislative luncheon where they let all the state representatives come there and all the farm-related, most of them are all farmers. They ask what help we can have down at the legislature. They went primarily through the same situation we did. They didn't get a whole lot of help on a lot of different legislation. It just wasn't coming out from down there. And this particular project come up that we're talking about of impact fees. We were also told at that time right there that it's not going to happen, and that one state representative, I think Representative Rudd, said he was not for it. He was not going to support it. And there were members within that group right there that said they're for impact fees, but it was not coming from that group there. And what sort of caught my attention, I have to tell you this, is that as Representative Rudd spoke, he talked about what the problem was. He said, the locals will not work with us. And that caught me to the fact that I said, we didn't have a name, we were locals. And I thought, okay, I'm a local, I guess that's what I am, but I didn't understand the using of the word locals. Referring back to the commission wouldn't work to us. But that's where we are. That's where we are. There's no talking going on. Everybody's going their own direction. And I just want to tell you this. When I became a commissioner, what my goal was, and I think that's pretty much most of you, I didn't come here for me. I come here for the folks out there that I represent and the people of Rutherford County. I have tried to, everything I've done here has not been about me, it's been about them. I hope that I never have to listen to someone out there where I represent saying that, hey, it's not about me, it's about him. I think that's what's important here. Got to get back to listening to each other.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to follow up. I've mentioned adequate facilities and that tax. Statement has been made, and I made the statement repeatedly to some of you actually that have asked, why in our right mind would we turn down any type of additional revenue? My thought process dealt with the adequate facilities increasing from $1 to up to $1.50 and leaving the bill intact. What we received this afternoon was the actual bill that was presented at the subcommittee or the committee day before yesterday. And it is much, much more than just increasing the adequate facilities from $1 to $1.50. We've had our county attorney, Nick Christensen, our I want to call him our deputy mayor, but our chief of staff, Eric Hennessy, which also has a law degree, and Will Denami, our lobbyist, been working trying to dissect that bill to see if, from a legal perspective, they can understand it. And I'd like to ask for a suspension of the rules to have these three individuals kind of give you a summary of what they've been able to determine that bill says. Once again, I'm not asking for any decision, don't want one. any decision at all about whether we support that bill or not. It's not the most important thing to us. But it's important, I think, that we know what's in that bill. And it's more than just increasing the adequate facilities from $1 to $1.50. There's language in there that not only affects Rutherford County, but other counties that have access to the adequate facilities.
Motion to suspend the rules, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion
Second.
and a second. All those in favor of suspending the rules, please say aye. Okay. I'd ask that Mr. Demosi, Eric Hennessy, and also Nick, if you would, approach the podium. And I'm not sure that, Will, you may have more legislative experience than all of us put together. So if you've had a chance to look at that bill, and let me just say that there have been those that have said that Will has been working against the adequate facilities bill. Right. I've had 3 conversations with him since last Friday afternoon. Tearfully, the way this guy's been treated has been an embarrassment to me and to probably some of us in the county. I know Will has made a statement time and time again that I'm not talking to you about the adequate facilities bill. I'm talking to you about our bill. That doesn't mean that he doesn't support it, but what it means is I'll call you to talk about our bill. And I think some people have construed a statement like that to say that we're opposed to it. That's not the case.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the commission. Let me start by saying it's a pleasure to be here. And you know, the legislative process is a complicated process, and it ebbs and flows, and it is not over. And it's probably a little over a month left. There are a lot of new developments since I've been here last. There's a lot of things that have changed since yesterday, and one of the things I want to start with, if I can, just do a quick history lesson about our bill, what we were doing, what it means, and why it was drafted the way it was. To start with, we had discussions going back in September and October, and in those discussions with the realtors and home builders, Murray County and others who were involved in that discussion, the $1.50 was what the realtors, the bill that we're going to talk about here in a minute, that was the proposal, the main discussion. And what I kept talking about for Rutherford County is this. And this is an image that represents where local authority exists. And local authority exists for impact fees in Rutherford County. Authority exists for impact fees in Rutherford County. And as everybody in this room knows, last year, the city of Murfreesboro, which has a school system, enacted educational impact fees. So our bill, because there's so much concern about the County Powers Relief Act and the interested parties within that body of law, our bill didn't touch it at all. We didn't want to complicate that process. We stayed completely out of it, trying to focus on the same authority, and the red represents that authority. The red represents the authority that Wilson County, Williamson County, and the cities within Rutherford County have, which is also what TASER recommended. So that bill, our bill, thank you commissioners who made the trip down to Nashville to be a part of that. That committee, that bill's off notice. The committee is closed, and sometimes committees reopen, but basically that's going to be done for the year. There is the other bill, the $1.50 bill, is moving forward. It moved forward from a subcommittee, and it moved forward from a full committee this past week. The $1.50 bill, if I can just call it that, it makes changes to the County Powers Relief Act and increases the amount of tax. And there's a difference between a fee and a tax, and a lot of people get confused about guardrails and things of that nature. Impact fees have guardrails built into them. Impact fees, there's two main Supreme Court cases, the Nolan and Dolan test, that come from the Supreme Court that deal with rational nexus and proportionality. So impact fees have to be rationally related to what you're building. In this case, we're talking about bedrooms, which end up putting kids in school. Proportionality is how much they're responsible for in terms of whatever project. An education impact fee would be for whatever project, and when the project is paid for, the fee goes away. Those are the guardrails that are built in. In the case of the city of Murfreesboro, their impact fee, now they have authority beyond education, so there's other components, but it's $1.50 per square foot. That's that current impact fee. This is an adequate, it's a schools facilities tax. So the revenue comes in, it's a tax, and it's currently on residential property per square foot up to $1. This will increase it to $1.50 and will include commercial as well. So if you add commercial, that's a new component, and it brings in a lot more conversation about the rationality to what's being done. But this is for schools. That the $1.50 is the increase cap, so it can go up to $1.50. There are components to be able to raise additional 10% beyond that. There's another component to it now that has a continual growth requirement. So a continual growth requirement of 20%. So before you had to qualify to go into it, now you have to continue to grow to be able to stay in it or be able to levy it. There's a lot of concern about what that means, how that will affect other counties, and a lot of people are looking at it. I'll defer to Nick for his legal analysis on what he thinks that means. I can tell you this, though, in terms of population, when you think about 20%, what does that mean? In 2000, Rutherford County had 182,000 was population. In 2010, it was 262. That was a 44% growth, 80,000 people. 10 years later, 2010 to 2020, it goes from 262 to 341, so almost 80,000 people, but that's a 30% growth. So growing at 80,000 people every 10 years, over time, the percentage will go down. But 20% is the threshold. So 20% means different things to different counties. So 20% to Rutherford County, being that this is about to be the fourth most populous county, that's a high threshold to have to hold to be able to maintain under this bill. So what does $1.50 mean? Because $1.50 does mean more revenue. It does mean more revenue. And when you add commercial, it also means more revenue. So roughly right now, and Michael's here, he can tell, but I mean, based on the numbers that we have here, $5.8 million is what this is what we think, this is the numbers that we have for Rutherford County. This is the latest numbers. So $5.8 million is what Rutherford County was bringing in if you at $1. So if you bring that up 50 cents, you could say roughly $3 million on residential. That would be an increase. Under the commercial component, this is a little harder to figure out. Tanya Bell, I think, did the analysis, Mayor, and went through all the different cities over the last 5 years, did a full analysis, and those numbers, they range on the low end from 944,000 square feet, which would bring in about $1.4 million at $1.50. On a high end, $2.8 million.
Updated from Tanya today.
If I could, Will, let me kind of interject here.
Is that significantly lower?
The figures that we put together, that Michael has put together today, talking about adequate facilities, in 2023, just the fiscal year 2023, we collected $5,950,000 on adequate facilities. If that was increased to $1.50, that would go up to $8,926,000 for an increase of almost $3 million, $2,975,000. So to increase adequate facilities just on residential would get us an additional $3 million, okay? And I've also asked Michael if he would to put together what if we had had an impact fee last year, the same impact fee that maybe Murfreesboro had, which is $2,500. That same impact fee would have created additional revenue of over $7 million last year, $7,600,000. So you're talking about an additional $7,600,000 that we did not have the opportunity to create last year. So that's what we're talking about. The adequate facilities created $5,900,000, and if we would have had an impact fee only at $2,500, it would be an additional $7,600,000. And of course, you could double that if we went up to $5,000, which is maybe the ceiling that Murfreesboro has. And I'm guessing that the study will probably show us in the very same neighborhood as Murfreesboro had. So I asked Michael to put together what did we get, what would we get from a residential perspective if we had the $1.50 on adequate facilities, and then also take a look at what if we would have had an impact fee last year, the same type of impact fee that Murfreesboro had, and that would, what would those figures be like? And that's where those figures came from. There are a lot of additional monies that could come out of commercial, if indeed that could pass at a state level, which is, challenging at best. But I think those difference from a commercial perspective would add an additional $4.2 million, and that would actually come up with the identical figure of $7 million that we could have had with an impact fee. So those are the figures, and these are hard figures. They're not guesswork. These are exactly what would have happened in 2023.
Repeat the commercial component again, please.
The commercial
repeat the square footage estimates.
Yes. The commercial square footage pretty much within Murfreesboro, Smyrna, Rutherford County, Laverne, and Eagleville. I think it was 2,800,000 square feet in essence, and that would have created the additional $7 million.
So $7.6 million on top of an anticipated $7 million in residential for a $14 million total. Am I correct? $14 million?
If we had the flexibility for both of those taxes.
Correct. So
if it's
I hope I'm not being
current,
rude, but I had to. We skipped over a couple. I needed to come back and have it be chronological.
Yep.
The $1.50 on the residential side would increase us from existing $6 million to $9 million.
Right.
The commercial component would add $7.64 billion.
Would have in 2023.
$4 million, and I just got handed this, so I'm not. The commercial would have added $4.
Correct.
2 million feet at $1.50. Is that the math? Mm-hmm. On top of the 9 that I just spoke of.
Yes.
9 and 4 is 13 million.
That's right.
The theoretical adequate facilities tax would generate theoretically $13 million.
Impact fee?
Theoretical.
Oh, yes. At $1.50 based on
Correct.
the 2,000.
It would generate, it would exceed our current 6 million.
Yes.
Increase it to 13.
That's right.
Okay, and that was not,
That's not the way I read that. The way I read that is, let me see this again, Nick, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying, because I really do. I need to hear it
Michael,
with
correct
clarity.
me if I'm wrong, but the way I read this, adequate facilities from $1 to $1.50 from residential would go up almost $3 million. And then if you add commercial, if we would have had commercial on that last year, it would have added $4.2 million. So the total would be almost $7 million.
Additional. In new revenue, correct, in new revenue.
That's correct.
Correct, thank you. I added the existing 6 to that for a grand total. Is that a correct math?
Yes, you're asking for what a total facility tax would be, yes. And I need to clarify a couple things on the numbers that were read. I asked Ms. Bell from the Building and Codes Office to pull data from 2023. So we didn't pull averages because I was asked to pull apples to apples for the 2023 year. So a couple things I want to clarify. The impact fee estimates was based on 3,040 new units. Now, I think when I spoke with Ms. Bell, she thought that was during the time of the moratorium on some apartment complexes that the city had put in place, so that number on a 10-year average is going to look a lot different than the last 5 years since that pause in apartment complexes. So that number is probably a little bit conservative on our impact fee estimate. However, the flip side is the same for commercial, where we had a little bit of an outlier year in 2023 from commercial. She did tell me she backed out things, some government buildings and things like that in that estimate, but I do believe that 2.8 million commercial square feet is on the high end of the 5-year average. But when I was asked to do was compare the 2023 of what we currently got versus $1.15 residential, and then we obviously don't have any on the commercial. So I did the 2023 on that, which was a little over 2.8 million square feet for commercial that Ms. Bell gave me. And then we used 3,040 new units, and that includes all the cities for our impact fee estimate. And so that's how we came up with our $7.6 million estimate at a $2,500 impact fee, and then a $15.2 million estimate at a $5,000 impact fee based on those number of units. But again, if we looked at an average over 10 years, that's going to be a little different based on, there were several years at apartment complexes, there was a lot of those, and then those have slowed. But on the flip side, just to reiterate, I do believe that 2.8 million square feet for 2023 was probably on the higher end from the 4 to 5 year average. But that's how we came up with the estimates, the numbers.
Commissioner Dodd, the reason that this was important to me was because some of those rumors that are going out there, and I really hate to repeat rumors, but some of them were the new adequate facilities would create additional revenue in the neighborhood of $21 million. And I wanted to make sure that that statement was either correct or incorrect, and that's one of the reasons that I asked Michael to put this together. If those statements are true, and I don't know whether they are or not, I don't know, but the new adequate facilities would create new additional revenue in the neighborhood of over $20 million bucks, and I just wanted to see if that's accurate or not accurate, and whether or not it was said. Some people I know have heard that figure, and it is not correct. The correct figures are the ones that we have here right now. This is what would have happened in 2023, and these are not numbers that were pulled out of the air. These are actual numbers that Michael put together.
Thank you. Will we have a chance to come back to the percentage increases? You mentioned the 20%. There's a 9% component, so will you come back to that too at some point?
9% over 4 years if you don't hit the 20% over 10.
So just if you would repeat to the commission rather, the 20% is the 10-year census.
Yep. So 20%, and like I said, for Rutherford County, if you think about how the population has grown over the census periods, 80,000 people used to be 44%. the same 80,000 then turned into 30%. So as you grow up in population, if you're growing, so you could grow 80,000 people, and at some point in time, that's not going to be satisfactory over the 10-year period. There's another component that you can have 9% growth over 4 years. So either one of those to qualify. Yep.
What happens if those figures are not met?
This is where it gets a little bit confusing, Mr. Chairman, and this is where there's a lot of, there's basically 3 different categories of counties. So you have counties that were prior to the 2006 County Powers Relief Act to have authority. So that's one category. You have another category, which is like Rutherford County and 5 other counties that are currently under the County Powers Relief Act. And then you have a third category, which are counties that have private acts that may go under the County Powers Relief Act. And so this attempts to spell out how that would what would happen, and this is where there's still some questions, and we're trying to get clarity about, quite frankly, about what happens, because that's a pretty serious consequence if you are planning to use these funds to build schools, and then something changes population-wise, and you've got some money allocated for debt service. So we're trying to get some clarity on exactly what does happen. There are different intents. And right now, Mr. Chairman, maybe Nick could speak to how the language of the bill is if he wants to, but I'm very uncertain as to what is going to happen to Rutherford County with the current draft that's floating around.
Nick, can you add anything to it?
I can try, yeah. So I'll just echo what Will said. I read the bill, got it today, and it does everything that Will has said. Building off of this last piece here that discusses what happens if at some point in the future the county doesn't meet the growth criteria, whether it be 10% over a decennial census or 9% over an increment of 4-year period, which I assume you'd have to determine by a special census if you're going to go that route, and you have to pay for that to do that. But if it turns out that at any point in the future, say in the 2030s or whatever, we don't meet that criteria, well, what happens? Can we still assess a school facilities tax at all? If we can, if so, at what rate? And so I've looked at it. I've had discussions with Eric. I've had discussions with Will this afternoon. If anything, this bill needs some clarity. It's probably this last piece to ensure that if it's something that the General Assembly is going to pass of statewide applications, not only are us affected by it, but the other counties that have already opted into the school facilities tax, they need to be rest assured that if they don't meet this growth criteria in the future, that they can still levy this tax in some way. There's different interpretations that one could read from this, and to me that means it's ambiguous and it's unclear, which can create disputes, and that's something that the county and no government wants to have when they're assessing a tax of its population. So I don't know what that language could look like. To the extent Will needs my help or whatever, I talked with him about and gave some suggestions today to kind of go back with that. But I mean, the real substantive policy aspect of this is the new addition of the growth criteria, because as of right now, that's not part of the statutory scheme, and we're allowed to do the dollar, and he raised it every 4 years by the 10%, but there's no cap that had been put on it before by way of a growth criteria measurement, and now that's been part of this. So that's just the initial take on it. That last piece, it needs to be cleaned up a little bit.
Thank you. Chairman, we suspended the rules, so please, I don't want to be breaking the rules, and I'm sitting because I thought in suspension it's a little less formal. But so there's you raised a substantive question we have about the language, and if I'm not jumping too far ahead, is this something that's most appropriate that our lobbyist ask that question and report back as soon as possible?
I don't want to answer for Will, but he's been in the... Go ahead.
So that's a... I think it's really important to have clarity. I mean, quite frankly, the county went under the County Powers Relief Act based on, anticipating these would be the rights of the county. This is what you could do. That's going to change now. The county went under the County Powers Relief Act July 1 of 2021, and now it's going to change in 2024 with this is a major change, this continual growth requirement. It's especially a major change for a county with the population of Rutherford County. So clarity is essential, I think, for you to know, and I'm working on that. The question is also essential to know for every other county that's under the County Powers Relief Act, and it's also essential to know for those counties who may be considering going under the County Powers Relief Act. So that is an essential question that we're going to try to get clarity on.
Excellent. And you being the voice of the 21 as opposed to 21 of us assaulting the delegation, you will take that question in whatever authority you have or to our delegates. Is that the appropriate path?
I'm working on that now. Yes, sir. Yeah. And consulting with other attorneys like Eric and with Nick, and deferring especially to Nick for analysis, but there's others that are involved. The County Services Association, who represents all the counties, and also other county attorneys from other counties that are going to be obviously impacted. So this is a central question. We have to have clarity for it. So we're trying to get an understanding on that.
Can you give them an idea of the calendar of events, like how much time's left in the session?
So Nick asked me if I could sort of give you an idea of the calendar of events, how much time's left in the session, where we are roughly. So really, the real reason the General Assembly has to meet, the one thing they have to do is pass the budget. So they're going to, on the 26th of March, the administration amendment or the budget's update from the governor is expected to be released. Typically, the legislature adjourns 2 to 3 weeks after that. So probably mid-April, that's what it looks like at the moment. Of course, anything can happen. Anything can happen. So the timeline events for this particular bill that we're discussing at the moment is next week. It is on calendar. The Senate State and Local Committee has called for its last calendar. So all the committees, in order to finish their business, they have a last calendar. There's about 120 bills on the calendar currently. Some of those bills could go away very quickly without any discussion, and in theory, more bills could be added to it with the suspension of the rules. But they'll start next week. This bill is on the last calendar, so it's on final calendar for Senate, State, and Local next week. It's in the Finance Committee subcommittee next week in the House. So the House and Senate are a little bit different in terms of the procedure. It's gone through two votes so far in the House, the Property and Planning Subcommittee, the Local Government Full Committee. It'll be in the Budget Subcommittee next week in the House. Following that, it would go to Finance Full Committee, then it goes to the Calendar Committee, then it goes to the floor. So in the Senate, it would go from the Senate, State, and Local Committee to the Finance Committee to the calendar to the floor. So it's still several weeks away. And then, of course, it goes to the governor for his, signature or non-signature or veto.
We're very informal, so Chairman Harris.
Touched on it a little bit, but you need to let the commissioners also know that what's in the House can be totally different from what's going to the Senate. So the Senate bill could change the language of this a whole lot more than what it is right now. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. That is exactly correct.
So whatever the HB is, the SB could come back and say 4% growth, or they could say something else. Is that correct? That is
100% correct. It could, and then the only requirement is that the final passage, they have to be identical. So to become law, it has to, at some point, you got to marry up and pick one or the other or something else. So
it goes to the Senate, and then the Senate does whatever it does, and it goes back to the House.
Yeah, and if you recall when I did the video that day to show you how the County Powers Relief Act was, they said, the Senate sponsor said, we're just going to take whatever comes over from the House. We're waiting to see whatever they can get done, and then we'll take it. So you can have very different bills traveling through the House and Senate, and there are some very major items that currently are very different traveling through the House and Senate right now, which will impact the budget and everything else. So yes, to your point, Mr. Chairman, that we've only seen the House version. This is, what we're discussing is the House version that's passed 2 committees and is on its way to the subcommittee of finance in the House.
I tried my best to read the bill this afternoon, and there are, I guess, different ways of looking at it, and I think that's what Will is saying. But one way of looking at it, and I'm not sure that it's accurate, but one way of looking at it is that with the additional population, that's a change to the bill. So it's not just increasing, but it's adding to the bill that might change the way the adequate facilities is looked at, period, statewide. And what happens if you don't meet that criteria, then it appears, the way some of us read it, the way I read it, is that it could possibly go away and you don't have anything. And then if you are part of the adequate facilities bill, I think there's some language in there, the way I read it, was that you couldn't implement any other type of a tax, such as an impact fee. Could I have read that totally wrong, or is that accurate?
I think, Mr. Chairman, I think it's confusing the way it's written, but I would say this. I believe, and Nick, please tell me if you disagree, I think it's more clear for counties who currently have a private act who would want to go under this law, what would happen if they came out. And where it's less clear is what happens to a county like Rutherford County that got rid of your private act to go in 2021. Now the rules are going to change with this 20% growth. You know, what happens there if you have 19.99%? I'm not clear with this language of what happens at that point, because there are effectively three different tiers. So those who are like Wilson County, Williamson County, that are not under this, Rutherford County, Bedford County, Cannon County that are, and then other counties that are under a private act like Murray County, who would presumably go under the County Powers Relief Act. So I think for counties that are considering going under it, I think it's a lot more clear of what would happen if they no longer meet the growth threshold. But I'm not clear. Nick, do you want to?
No, that's right. You're right.
Yeah, Eric?
I think one other thing that's important here is whatever that is, then you're stuck with it, is the way I read this. So if you had got into the County Powers Relief Act under the new provisions based on the 2010 to 2020 growth rate of 20%, and you then at a subsequent time don't qualify for that, I read this to say that you're out for 10 years. Whatever happens, which I think there's some confusion there as to what happens, but whatever happens for 10 years. And you've got to wait till the next census rolls around to have that growth. So in essence, if we had 19.9% growth in 2030 census, then whatever this requires us to do, we're doing it until the 2040 census. And then the 2040 census, we could have had 40% growth from 2030 to 2040, but we've lost all of that revenue for those 10 years. That's a big thing here. So it's not, as Chairman said, it's not just raising $1 to $1.50. They're potentially putting something in here that could greatly impact this county and the ability to raise funds for schools.
Any other questions or comments? I hesitate to what is our path forward. I guess Will is our lobbyist and has actually kind of kept us abreast of certain things. And if there's no objection, I think we should ask Will to try to get clarity on those type of things. And without objection, we'll give him that assignment and to get back with us as soon as possible. We may even, if it's an issue, we may call a special meeting of our steering committee to discuss what Will finds out and the interpretation to see what, if anything, we want to do. So without objection, that's kind of my path forward. We may have to call a special steering committee on a day's notice so that we can react to it if it's possible for us to react to it. We spent a lot of time talking about this adequate facilities bill, and I want to take us back to where we started, okay? It's not our bill, all right? Our bill is the one that we presented, and that's the one that we'll continue to work on. His opinion on this one is his opinion, and it won't be our opinion. So his opinion on this will remain neutral until he gets back with us, okay? Commissioner Dodd.
Thank you. You said a moment ago that the impact fee, when the purpose or its use is paid off, it ceases. Help me with that one. Is that the tax doesn't cease, just like we assume this other tax may cease at a certain time? We still collect the tax, but we may choose to put it on another cost item?
You do a new study. So the impact fee is based on a study. You have to do a study to enact it, because you have to meet the Nolan-Dolan test. So that's your proportionality, rationality. So you'd have to do a new study.
But the rate per dwelling wouldn't go away when you said a moment ago, please correct me if I'm wrong, it triggered me, but I'll just cook a note. You said the impact fee has by legislation in its bill, if the item you're paying for is paid off, the impact fee ceases. You made a statement similar to that a moment ago.
That's correct.
But the fee continues to be charged per dwelling, or does it go away?
No, you'd have to do a new study to put in a new fee.
Similar to this other tax, it goes, whatever. I'm sorry. Thank you. Thanks for that clarity.
But not similar, because...
You're correct. Yeah, I withdraw that statement.
Okay.
Any objection for Will to look into this? And once again, it's a neutral type of thing, and he's going to bring the information back to us as soon as he gets the information.
Question.
Yes, Commissioner Pearcey.
You've covered this several times about the adequate facility tax is not our bill, correct?
It's not the one that we passed, yes.
Whose bill is it, and who's pushing it?
This was discussed in the meetings that I was in September and October of last year with the realtors, the home builders, and Murray County. And originally, this is very similar to what the Realtors Association said they were comfortable with. So Murray County has been working, I think, very diligently on this proposal, and I think the home builders have more recent. Obviously, I don't speak for any of those groups, and I don't want to. I'm just trying to characterize my perception of what's happened in those meetings, and I think the home builders have since got on board with this proposal, this more finished proposal.
Thank you very much.
Who sponsored it, Will? From the House?
Representative Tim Hicks.
Other questions? It's getting late, and I know our brains are kind of confused a little bit. Any other questions or comments? I see our mayor is here. Mayor Carr, do you have anything you'd like to add? Thank you for being here. Appreciate that. Anybody have anything else? Let me get into our shout-outs. Anyone have anything you'd like to shout out tonight?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Call us
Commissioner
back into
James.
session. We're back in session.
I'm sorry?
Can you call us back into session?
We're back into session. Yes, yes, I did. Thank you, Commissioner Oliver.
I wanted to make a shout out. I went out last weekend. I came back into town, and as many of you know, I'm kind of back and forth a lot right now these days with my orders. But I showed back up at Riverdale High School, who was hosting the county archery contest, and wanted to give praise to their winners of that contest. For Christiana Elementary, won first place for elementary side. The middle school was Stewart's Creek Middle won first. And on the high school, Riverdale High School won first. The first overall competitor, female Sarah Agee from Blackman, came in first place, and the male competitor, Jackson Harris from Central Magnet, won off. And I wanted to give congratulations to those students and those bodies, those teams, for well done. And then when I got back in today, at the Miller Stadium, the state tournament is going on, and that is really a hidden gem for both the county and the state. They're also participating tomorrow, and I would welcome as many of you to show up and go in and visit that and see what's going on. We have 29 teams from our schools in this county alone, a very large delegate from them participating and are doing very well. It's a really growing sport, so I want to give them credit.
Thank you, Mr. James. Anyone else? Our next meeting is April the 11th. And if you guys will indulge me for a minute, Commissioner Harris, what's your father's name? Herbert. If you guys will indulge me, and you don't have to, but if you would bow your heads with me, I'd like to offer up a Thanksgiving prayer, if you don't mind. Our Father, we thank you today for this day and for the many blessings of life. We thank you for the abundant life that we have in Rutherford County, and we thank you for the leaders of this county, and we ask that you be with the leaders of this county as we continue to do the bidding of the people of Rutherford County. There's a special heaviness on our hearts tonight. Craig Harris, his dad Herbert, is in a dire need for healing. We don't know what the future holds for him, but as people, we would have him well, and we pray for his health. But we also pray for your will to be done in his life. We ask you not only to be with him, but we ask you to be with Craig's family as they go through this and meet the needs in that family as we go forward. Once again, we ask for health, but we also ask for your guidance and for your will to be done. Be with us once again as we go out into the community and we do your will in addition to the will of the people of the county. In Christ's name I pray, amen. We're adjourned.